up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a comparison of the KFC Transistor with the Deformation Space Recording Alliance, both versions of a masterpiece blaster. So this figure has been out for quite a while. It's been the king, I think, since 2015. This figure just came out in 2022. I just reviewed it. So we're going to do a comparison. As I always mention with these, I try to be as objective as possible, but of course there's subjectivity involved when comparing figures like this. So if I pick one and you prefer the other, then you win. I really try to do these comparisons so people can decide for themselves which direction they want to go with their collection. With that being said, let's get started, and we'll start off with accessories. So there are all the accessories that come with these guys. Obviously you can see KFC is going to have more, but let's go through them one by one. They both come with a set of speakers, painted. Those look nice. They both come with a blaster. Now KFC comes with two blasters, whereas the Deformation comes with one. So we're gonna just match up the single one. They both come up with a alternate face. Now this is actually a full alternate head. It's that toy style head, whereas this is just a smiling face, but we'll match those up. They both come with a tape. Now they're different tapes, so I can't really compare them, but you know, you got rewind and you get ram horn here, so that's fine. And here's what you're left with. KFC comes with two additional faces for their tape, one toy style and then one comic style. You get the tape cover here, you get alternate translucent eyes for the head, and you get a second gun. So we're going to give accessories over to KFC. All right, next we're going to talk about the gimmicks on these two. They both have the exact same gimmicks. They've got the opening chest here with the button. They both have an eject button that pushes forward this inner piece here. This one's on the back, and this one is right here. Unfortunately, the Deformation Space one doesn't actually work. It gets jammed up due to the paint. So you can see it just kind of gets stuck. You kind of have to help it the rest of the way. I don't know if it's due to paint or sculpt or just the overall tolerances, and that's just a general problem with this one. So we're going to give gimmicks over to KFC, even though they both have the feature. Deformation Space failed to actually deliver on it. So next we're going to talk about the cartoon accuracy. In order to do that, we'll put the G1 image there so you can take a look for yourself. And we're not going to waste any time. It's a no-brainer. Deformation Space definitely nails the cartoon look. Some would say almost to a fault, but this is more stylized. So we're going to give cartoon accuracy over to Deformation Space. All right, next we'll talk about the sculpt on these two. And some people will find the sculpt on this interesting. The KFC has a little bit more going on, and they've painted some of the sculpt. But as soon as you move away from the front view, things start to fall apart for KFC. So you got a lot of bulk on the arms here. The way they've done the arms, the joint actually comes in the middle. So you got all of this bulk back here. And then as soon as you turn to the backpack, that's where things are all messed up. You got the back of the legs. So you got these parts here. You got these parts on his backpack. So kind of a mess, whereas Deformation Space is super duper clean. So we're going to give sculpt over to Deformation Space. I just think they did a better job cleaning up this robot mode and alt mode. All right, next let's talk about the paint on these two figures. When it comes to paint, there's two things I consider. One is the amount of paint, and the second thing is the robustness or the quality of the paint. So when it comes to Deformation Space, it is 100% painted. Everything you see, all the colors are paint, with the exception of this translucent piece right here on the chest. And it is a relatively good paint. The only issue is it's a matte finish. So it does show scratches. Now, I don't have too much issues with scratches, but there are some, if you look from a certain angle, that show up quite easily. And that is due to the matte finish. Wherever it is gloss is only right here, and that one doesn't show as much as the matte paint, but it is fully painted. When it comes to KFC, it's not quite fully painted, so the biceps, the thighs, and the feet are all just a colored plastic. The rest you see, the silver, the yellow, the metallic red, is all paint. The face, both faces are painted. And I don't have any issues with flaking on this one. The original version of the KFC Transistor did have paint flaking issues. I do have some chipping here and there, just little spots here and there, but overall, The paint is well done on this figure, and I don't have any scratches pretty much anywhere. I've transformed this a couple times. I don't have any scratches other than the one I showed you. So because the paint is a little bit more robust, it seems, at least on this version of Transistor, I want to give them the robustness, but I want to give them, Deformation Space, the amount of paint. So I'm going to give them a tie on paint. I think they both did a good job. Next, we'll talk about the build quality. And again, I'm not going to waste any time. The Deformation Space is solid. It does have some die cast here in the feet and some of the internal hardware. It really locks together and solid in both the robot and alt mode. The KFC Transistor always has been a little bit loose. All the joints have felt loose. Panels feel loose. Things don't necessarily lock into place. And it just doesn't have that same solid feel. And since we're talking about build quality materials, I did want to take a weight here just so you can see for yourself. So the KFC weighs in at 11 ounces. It's 11 and 7/8 ounces, or 340 grams. And the Deformation Space weighs in at 1 pound, ½ ounce, or 467 grams. So much more material. There is a little bit of die cast as well. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to give build quality over to Deformation Space. Next, we'll talk about the transformation. And yet again, this is another place where KFC tends to not do well typically. And this is no exception. The transformation here is not very fun. There's a lot of panel forming, and overall it's a shell former. Part of the problem is the shell doesn't have places to sit. So you end up like trying to put panels together and they don't want to stay, and so you're fighting with it the whole time to get all the panels together kind of all at the same time. This one is a very fluid and fun transformation. You can actually watch my video I just put out, but really honestly the only difficult step is down here with the feet, getting this panel to clear the feet. But other than that, really fun and intuitive. So we're going to give transformation over to Deformation Space. We're also going to give engineering over to Deformation Space. They were able to engineer it to the point where it's so clean in robot mode and so clean in Alta mode. It's just, you know, a really good engineering to be able to do that and get all the pieces and parts away. I mean, just as just an example, here's the handle for the Alta mode, and the handle here is inside the leg. So just an example of what I'm talking about. So we're going to give both transformation engineering over to Deformation Space. Next, we'll talk about the articulation. In order to do that, we'll articulate each one individually so you can take a look. So the head for KFC is on a rotating swivel, rotates all the way around and looks up and down. It is kind of on the loose side. And the problem is they put it on a screw, and that screw loosens over time. There's also an issue, at least not on my copy, but on a lot of copies, where this tab doesn't stay. Thankfully, I've got one where it does stay, so that's good. But the head itself does loosen up over time. You can tighten up that screw. He can articulate his ears, so if you want his ears down like that, you can have it. I don't know if he ever did that in the show, but you can do that. Shoulders rotate around on a friction joint, a little bit loose. Goes out to the side on a friction joint. That one's a little bit more tight. Rotation at the bicep. You do have a double joint elbow, but due to the way it's designed, you can't really get it past 90 degrees. That's pretty much all you can get. Rotation at the wrist. Individually articulated fingers, and I've never liked the way the KFC does their fingers because they're on ball joints, and the ball joints are very loose. They tend to rotate on you and get out of the way, but they are fully articulated. The thumb is also on a ball joint, so you can get expression out of them. They're just kind of fiddly because they're always moving on you, but you do get the full articulation. Rotation at the waist, no ab crunch on this guy. Of course, the chest does open up like I showed you earlier. You have hip skirts here that'll move out of the way on the front, and this waist swivel is loose. That is typical for this figure. The leg goes up to there, but due to the sculpt, it does collide there. Back to here, hindered by the sculpt. Out to the side on a ratchet, gets up to there. Rotation at the mid-thigh, it does break the sculpt there. Single jointed knee gets you 90 degrees. Ankle tilts out to there. Pivot back and forth on that ankle. So moving on to Deformation Space. The head is also on a rotating swivel, so it rotates all the way around. It goes up to there, so way far up, all the way back basically. And you can get it down on that joint. No ear movement, and you can get a little bit of side to side due to the way that's designed. Shoulders rotate all the way around on a nice ratchet. They go up to there on this joint, up again on that joint, so you can get it all the way up like that. Really nicely done. You have a rotation at the bicep. It is a little bit tight, but it does work. You have a double jointed elbow, so you bend at the top one first and then the bottom one. You can get the full bend out of that elbow. You have a rotation at the wrist, individually articulated fingers. Fingers are on 2 pins, 1, 2, and then the thumb is on a pin, a ball joint and 2 pins. And they do hold. They're nice and secure, not flimsy. You have a rotation at the waist, and I think a lot of people probably miss this because it's super duper tight, but you do have a rotation all the way around. You have an ab crunch here, and you have 2 bends there, so that actually works really well. I love how that looks. You have a drop down hip, which allows the leg to go up to there, back to here, out to the side on friction. Rotation at the thigh, it does break the sculpt there. You have a double jointed knee, you have to bend at the top joint first and then the bottom, and you get the full bend all the way back. Ankle tilt out to the side, toe tilt up. So pretty obvious, we're going to give articulation over to deformation space. They've got fully articulated or double jointed knees, double jointed elbows, and the ab crunch is all going to give it the win over KFC. All right, next we'll talk about the alt mode on these two guys, and there's a lot to talk about. So first of all, I was kind of surprised how similar they were in size. So they are the same width in this direction. The KFC is a little bit wider going back here. There is a lot more gaps and just panels and things on the KFC. The deformation space is definitely cleaner, kind of all throughout. Not only the back, the top, the sides, every direction is just a little bit cleaner on the deformation space. And if we put the G1 cartoon up there, it's pretty obvious the deformation space nailed that cartoon look. Whereas the KFC was kind of a mix. It was meant to be a more realistic boombox plus trying to look like the cartoon. So they did a good job mixing it. But my criteria for alt mode is really how close is it to the cartoon, the original source material, and how well does it function as the alt mode, whatever it is. So in this case, it's a tape player. So they both do have the eject button here. They both come with tapes, and you can put the tape in here. Unfortunately, the deformation space one is a really tight fit, and then these little horns do get stuck. I actually popped one off trying to get it out of here. But if you push this back, that will allow you supposedly to fit 2 tapes. But unfortunately, you can't even get this tape in. It's a really tight fit. And that eject button doesn't really do the trick. It just kind of gets jammed up. So you see it's already stuck. So if I take this out, you can see this didn't really do its job. It just kind of gets stuck in there. I think it's due to the paint. I'm not really sure why it doesn't work properly, but it doesn't seem to eject when it's supposed to eject. Yeah, now it's really stuck in there. So this one, the KFC, there's an eject button on the back here. So the little yellow button, I'll show you. That one really ejects it out. So because that function doesn't work on the deformation space version, I'm going to give the functionality over to KFC, but the look and the overall sculpt and feel I'm going to give to deformation space. So they're going to get a tie on alt mode. The final factor on these two is the cost, and we're going to go off of US retail, not the Chinese or Shouzi or any of those. So in the American retail, this figure is actually available right now. It's $150. This figure is available also for $200 from American retail. So we're going to give cost over to KFC. Even if you use the old cost or the Shouzi cost, you still are going to have KFC win. So we're going to give cost to KFC. So final thoughts on the comparison here. You can see the score there, and deformation space is going to win pretty easily here. Not a surprise to me anyway. I did feel like deformation space would probably win this. And where KFC goes wrong, and this is typical for them, is the build quality and the overall finish and fitment for engineering and transformation. They tend to cut corners and make things a little bit cheaper. And while it looks really good in both robot mode and alt mode, it tends to have issues. So for example, loose joints. These fingers, by the way, as I was setting up this pose, putting that gun in there, the finger popped off the ball joint and flew across the room. Took me 15, 20 minutes to find it. Setting up this guy, he kept falling down because his joints are loose in the legs, and just the overall tolerances are, not consistent on the joints. Same for this guy, the tolerances are not consistent. When it comes to deformation space, it's solid. I mean, everything feels solid. And I think that's where KFC needs to improve. They really need to get consistent. They really need to improve quality to be able to compete with companies like Deformation Space, Fans Toys, MMC. Need to improve that quality so they can really continue to have the nice looks and sculpts, but also have the quality. So for me personally, it's a hands down win for Deformation Space. I know there's some people out there who are still fans of the KFC Transistor, but me personally, I'm going to stick with this guy. He's going to be my blaster. That's it for this comparison. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.